Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel. We start a new series, the Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling Series. There's about 200 episodes or so available in this series on the network at the moment. We're going to run through that as see fit and hopefully find some others, maybe get 200 and 250 episodes up. Anyway, this is our new series, and so I'm excited about that. We're going to add to the old series, of course, but we continue to be the most comprehensive wrestling review series available. Outlaw Ron Bass starts today's program, which is the September 12th, 1981 edition. He is your new NWA television champion. Of course, this is basically what becomes of the nature of WCW eventually, and indirectly Jim Crockett Promotions, also called Crockett. So just kind of there. Steamboat and Jake Roberts versus Marty Miller and Jim Nelson. Jim Nelson, of course, later becomes Crusher Khrushchev and all sorts of, Boris Zukov, all sorts of other things. Jake Roberts and Ricky Steamboat as baby faces. Mike Miller, big guy for the age, and we have Steamboat trying to get a grapple on with him, Greco-Roman type deal there, basic maneuvers. Steamboat takes him down with some arm bars. One thing I like about the Mid Atlantic is they do focus more on comprehensive wrestling than a lot of gimmickry here in 81, 82. But they're also kind of competitive matches, even when there's enhancement. Jake Roberts comes in; he's much thinner than we go to see him over the next 4 or 5 years, and of course, Nelson is taken down into kind of headlock, full Nelsons and then headlocks, takes him over snapmares, basic stuff. Roberts kind of goes around. The teaming with Steamboat's more about kind of getting the baby faces over. Tag team wrestling, a pretty big thing here. Takedown with a full body scissors by Mike Miller. Miller comes in and takes a couple of shots at Roberts. They get a couple of minutes out of the whole run around there. Kickoff, Miller tries to go for monkey flip, but Roberts says, I'm too smart for that, I'm too quick for that, mentally and emotionally and all that good stuff. Anyway, we see attempted double team actually by the heels here. Take over. Steamboat comes back in the ring, gets taken down with the snapmare, followed by a snap headlock and pretty basic stuff. Ultimately, the match is good, though, just in terms of psychology. Jake Roberts and Rick Steamboat obviously feud a bunch of years later, but would be interested to know how long they've been a team. Steamboat talks in a future episode about kind of being a guy who doesn't necessarily or hadn't been in the role very long in terms of being back in the area toward the Orient and all that. A assisted double foot kick there by Steamboat and Roberts coming together, and Roberts comes back around, shoulder tackles by Steamboat and all of that, and a hard shot with Jake Roberts keeping things going. Knee lift and then a back suplex. Roberts getting the pinfall on that, and there we go. We go into our next in series of matches here, and the Mid Atlantic champion Ivan Koloff against Terry Latham. Koloff is your Mid Atlantic champion, which at the time is a pretty big deal. Of course, Ric Flair ends up winning the NWA World Championship within a couple of weeks here. I believe the September 19th edition is where they're talking about that. But the Mid Atlantic champion is the guy here in the area. Of course, Koloff having been the WWF champion in 1971. So 10 years later after that, Latham, hangs with him a little bit, tries to key lock on the arm. One thing I like about guys in the 80s is they actually made holds look like they actually hurt, putting some extra torque on things, giving a guy their body. Body slam by Koloff. Koloff, very basic, working over the arm, but also very much so a brawler. Kind of squaring up there. More so towards the brawling, trying to take cheap shots, get the kidney punch in, does Koloff. One thing I like is that guys like Terry Latham, who are still enhancement talents, are made to look competitive, but not goofily so. TV matches are more shown as competitive athletics rather than squashes in the Mid Atlantic area. At least that's what I've learned through what I've watched. And I mean, I've pre-watched a lot of stuff. Of course, time to record to the major challenge with series like this, but pre-watching up until probably May or April of '82. Bear hug by Koloff, who then drives his man back to the corner. Koloff then comes off the top rope with a top rope knee drop, kind of driving him down into the canvas, and a victory there. We then go to a modified or a review bit there as Wahoo McDaniel is going at it with Rene Goulet. Abdullah the Butcher runs in. Roddy Piper seems to be the manager or second for Abdullah the Butcher. They black out the fact that, in fact, McDaniel is being jabbed in the head with a fork, and a lot of brawling, taking out many baby faces in the process with this particular run. Then we move to the next in the series of matches, which happens to be the Super Destroyer and the Grappler defeating Don Kernoodle and Scott McGhee. Scott McGhee, a enhancement talent guy. Kernoodle, of course, known as a pretty big deal in the Carolinas at the time. The Grappler and Super Destroyer, interesting tag team, heel tag team. Grappler, of course, known mainly for his Portland stuff, although he does do some world-class stuff. By the way, if you haven't already checked out our world-class episodes, worth checking those out. Over 300 episodes there. Kernoodle gets an atomic drop and basic maneuvers on the Grappler. Grappler backs off. Super D a bit stronger and a bit taller than the Grappler, so the double mask tag team kind of just fun to play with a little bit. Super D comes in, goes after Scott McGhee, pretty hard shots along the way. McGhee is put over as being from England eventually in a future promo. They cut off on McGhee mainly because he might be considered the weaker link, a little bit less advantageous than Kernoodle. Kicks and such to the side of the head after Kernoodle misses a elbow drop and the like, and then we see the run there with the Grappler managing to get things going back his way a little bit, and then the Super Destroyer makes his way up onto the second rope on the inside. The Superplex is the eventual result, and the Grappler happy with that. Jake Roberts and Ricky Steamboat up with a promo. As mentioned, Steamboat basically saying that he hasn't been around in a while. Also, there is a Roberts is talking about wanting to be at the top of the tag teams. Also talking about Ole Anderson, who would be top heel at the time. Jay Youngblood makes his way out to congratulate the new television champion. The benefit of Ron Bass. It's kind of that goes kind of in a positive direction there. Then we kind of go to another one of our matches, which happens to be Sergeant Slaughter, who is doing the military heel gimmick here. Puts his man on the top rope, beats him down almost like a backbreaker, only landing him on the top rope instead of in the middle of the ring. And then we see Slaughter continuing that run. Slaughter against Mike Davis. Davis doing the majority of selling. Davis, very young guy who ends up being primarily a good deal in like the Texas area. Slaughter bumps him around hard, running clothesline. Slaughter about 9 or so years of experience doing the Sergeant Slaughter gimmick for maybe about a year or two here. And then we see Abdullah the Butcher do another run-in on a worldwide wrestling show from a previous broadcast, which we do not have access to here. But anyway, the chaos of Abdullah the Butcher, pretty big deal. Abdullah taking on his man, forking the guy in the head. Roddy Piper in a business suit continuing to encourage that chaos. And Abdullah the Butcher, certainly not a favorite guy of mine. Very little actual talent in the guy outside of bloodletting. Anyway, tag team match, I believe, will close us off for the day as the new television champion, Ron Bass, and Jay Youngblood. Youngblood, a major deal at the time. Youngblood, a guy that a lot of people are in love with at the time. I think he's passed away in 83, 84. Had a lot of inner demons, so to speak, but still a guy that deserves and needs a lot of respect for that benefit. And Abdullah the Butcher obviously beating Ron Ritchie in the previous match. Ron Bass and Jay Youngblood against Ali Bey and Ron Harris. Uh, so, I mean, that's kind of a big, who later becomes Black Bart. Um, some basic go rounds there. Youngblood, obviously, the heartthrob at the time. Ron Bass, of course, your TV champion. Interesting to see him as a babyface because that's not normally how we see him. Ali Bey takes his man down and gets, some basic stuff like monkey flips and that. And Ron Bass kind of staying in the brawl for quite a bit here as long as he can. Your basics with Ron Harris are pretty solid. He hasn't, of course, come across the Black Bart gimmick yet, otherwise we would call him Black Bart. But they cinch up onto some basic maneuvers, front face locks and the like. Simple, basic stuff, nothing necessarily to write home about, but a style that makes you want to go to the matches live in the sense that they always look like there's true competition going on. Jay Youngblood comes back in, hits dropkick under the chin of Harris, and the TBS Style Studios, pretty big deal. Suplex also by Youngblood, who manages again to be a guy worth taking a peek at for numerous reasons. Drops the elbow, doesn't get the victory quite yet, but does end up contributing to the victory. The cutoff by the babyfaces is pretty pronounced here, and then we do end up closing the match, obviously with a win. There is a series of short promos. Ivan Koloff basically said he wants to team with Ole Anderson again and is ready to defend the title wherever necessary. Austin Idol, who's relatively new to the area, I believe at this point, talking about the women wanting to be with him and him wanting to be at the top of the rung. Sergeant Slaughter feels that the announcer, Bob Caudle, has disrespected him. Slaughter says he's going to teach everyone discipline whether they want it or not. And that will close the first in the Mid-Atlantic Series. We'll be back with more right after this.